lot of people don't realize how big Lake Superior is.
Well, I never thought of the danger that it really was.
It's hard to believe that a ship of that size, 29 men.
I'd like to think that despite the horror of the moment, that they saw the other shore.
This is where lost hopes and dreams come to rest, a destination never reached, the shore of Whitefish Point. Lined by pebbles, their sides worn smooth, rounded by the crash of the surf. But for the lake's greatest wreck, it hasn't been long enough. Memories are still jagged, still sharp, and cut like the frigid breath Superior blows during the gales of November. For a surly captain, a California cowboy, a college kid looking for adventure, and 26 other men, their story ended 25 years ago. For their friends, their family, 1975 is the year it began.
We had a talk on the phone before, about a few days before, and the last word was said, "I love you."
On the other end of that line saying those words was a 22-year-old college student. He decided to take a year off, take a job on a boat, and he landed one of the best ones out there. Everyone wanted to work on the Queen of the Lakes, the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Of course, I didn't want him to go at that time because I thought he should stay in school.
He'd have time later for that, he said. As Ruth Hudson put down the phone, she had no idea her only son was getting aboard a doomed ship. For Bruce Hudson, time was something he didn't have. When the Fitzgerald was first launched in 1958, she was the largest the Great Lakes had ever seen. Many longed to sail on her. David Weiss was one of those men. He was just a cadet in 1975, but he had bigger dreams.
He was a cowboy. He was a cowboy from California that was going to overtake the Great Lakes maritime industry.
He was also Dean Hobbs' college roommate. Both were completing their studies to become officers. Hobbs had taken a commission aboard an oil tanker, Weiss aboard the Fitzgerald. But by the fall of '75, David Weiss was having problems. And when he met up with his good friend Dean Hobbs in Sault Ste. Marie, the two of them struck a bargain.
He was looking to possibly trade ships or see if there was an opportunity where we could get together, and he would get on the Indiana and I would get on the Edmund Fitzgerald. Well, of course, that never came about because we never met at the locks again.
Years later, as captain of the Ludington car ferry, Dean Hobbs often reflects on how close he came to being there that fateful night. Some recall it as the biggest storm they'd ever seen. Others still argue that they'd seen bigger. But all know it was strong enough on the 10th of November to force a 729-foot oarboat beneath the waves. That night, winds gusted to 90 miles an hour. Waves grew to 35 feet. The power to this lighthouse was knocked out. In an intense storm, the Edmund Fitzgerald was racing for the safety of Whitefish Bay. She never made it. On a cold November night, the Edmund Fitzgerald and 29 men aboard simply vanished. No one knows what went through their minds, if it was terrifying or peaceful, if it was expected or not. No one knows what exactly happened that night. The reasons for the sinking are still debated today. But there is one certainty. As the morning light broke across Superior and the waves began to calm, there were no survivors, and no one wanted to believe it.
Well, I thought they must have made a mistake because the Fitzgerald was so big that they must have made a mistake in the ship.
Ruth Hudson's last conversation with her son was on the phone. That morning, she learned of his fate on the car radio.
I kept thinking that all the way home, that they had made a mistake.
On the other side of the state, the news rang from the bell tower of Mariners Church, echoing throughout the streets of Detroit.
I grabbed the bell pull rope and tolled the Brotherhood bell 29 times.
Once for each of the lost souls, all of which had found a watery grave. 550 feet below the surface of Lake Superior lies the fractured wreck of the Fitzgerald. In the years since the sinking, there have been dives reaching those depths. One of them retrieved a lasting memorial, the bell that bears the ship's name. It is a reminder of the cruelty of the lake, and if Ruth Hudson's wish is granted, it will also serve as a warning to future divers. Leave the tomb that has become the Edmund Fitzgerald alone.
It's their grave, and we like for them to respect the same as they would a grave on land.
And we remember with reverence, with humor, and with thanksgiving for what that individual life has meant to us.
"25 years ago, they were sons and fathers and friends known to few. But for some reason, we've all come to know them. Perhaps it's the mystery of the sinking or the haunting ballad of Gordon Lightfoot. Or maybe a lingering message left behind.
So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom.
29 men rode that ship to the bottom, but their legacy still endures." At Whitefish Point, Brett Thomas, News 8. To the bottom, but their legacy still endures. At Whitefish Point, Brett Thomas, News 8.